You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
This is John Mueller, and you've been listening to the Grawlix Podcast.
Oh, that was awesome! He's been so quiet this whole time, and my dog chimed in on the ID.
He came in right at the end, and it was like,
yeah, but it made it more awesome.
because it was such a serious ID.
All right, this is Randy.
This is Melanie.
And this is Jesse.
Now, earlier, I believe it was this month, I think our last episode, we talked about a book that Jesse introduced us to called OINK Heaven's Butcher. Mm-hmm. And we enjoyed this book quite a bit, and at the time we didn't even realize there was a Kickstarter going on to fund a very nice-looking set, hardcover edition of the book. And we're super excited to have John, it's pronounced Mueller, correct?
That's correct, yes.
We're very excited to have John Mueller here to talk about that and all kinds of other stuff. How's it going?
Very good. Thanks for having me on. That's it's cool that you guys were just talking about the book, and somehow we connected in the Twitterverse, and yeah, it's great to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was really excited how it worked out that way.
Yeah.
Because we didn't even tag you when we did the episode. It was just totally like, hey.
Twitter is an amazing thing.
It kind of, yeah, it really is. I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
It affords us awesome opportunities like this. Mm-hmm. So for people who don't know, you wrote and illustrated OINK Heaven's Butcher. Originally, it was released in 95.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like a long time ago, but yes. This is a really old book. Yes, 1995. It was published originally by Kitchen Sink Press.
Then recently, you released the, I guess you could call it remastered?
That's what, a lot of people call it the remastered edition. I think that it's sort of it's a reboot, whatever. It's sort of like just going back and resetting the foundation for myself so that I can make new books. And, the series was really the first thing I'd ever done professionally. And I'd been away for a very long time, and I just wanted to kind of reset the button with that book, mostly because the book had been out of print, and it had picked up a following over the many years. And people would often ask me what I was doing with it. And so this is kind of an answer to that.
I'm kind of excited. I would like to read the remastered version because we read the other, and Jesse read the new one. And just from the little bits that we saw that were different, I'm excited to read the other also.
That's interesting. So, yeah, I wasn't sure if you guys had read if you guys were discussing the original, which was published, long time ago, or if you were discussing the recent version, which I put out recently. So it sounds like you guys were discussing the older, like somebody had found the older book and like, hey, I found this old comic, and it came up in a discussion on your podcast.
Well, we discussed both actually, because Jesse had picked up the new version, and that's how we had found out about it.
I judged the book by the cover. I was looking through solicits for upcoming trades, and the cover was so striking. And I read the solicit, seeing that it was being remastered, and I thought, this looks great, and I bought it. I bought it based on that alone, and then flipping through it, I knew that it would be something that would be up Randy's alley for sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where we got here, yeah. Yeah,
he suggested it, so we went digging for a copy, and we found the old ones, older prints, and so we kind of started discussing it
on the show, I think.
On the show, up until the point where Jesse started talking about sections, and we're like, I don't think ours had that. Mm-hmm. So then we do discuss kind of We did discuss kind of the some of the differences too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's quite a few differences between the editions. So I had spent a few years doing this, sort of like in my downtime. I make video games for a living. My current project called Bedlam. It's by my own little independent studio. So my life right now is all sort of crowdfunded projects, and which is great. I love it. It's all sort of my own creator-owned stuff, and which is kind of how I started. I started out as sort of really believing in the sort of creator-owned movement, which happened in the mid '90s, and that was my direction for quite a while. And I kind of got derailed off that by just life, and then I'm finally back at it after many years of being away.
I don't know if it was a blog post or what I'd come across, but it was about, I believe it was Blood and Circus. Basically, where you it seemed like the company you were that was going to publish the book was folding, and you had to rush to finish it in order to get it released.
That was around. So I had done a follow up to OINK called Blood and Circus, which you can still find, like if you go on eBay. It's not in print though at all. I mean, it was a full 96-page graphic novel that I followed up OINK with, and because I always kind of envisioned this as a 3-story series, and I never really got to finish it. But the 98 version of Blood and Circus is still out there. There was only about, I think, 20,000 issues that were printed, and they're still floating out there. And you'll see them pop up. If you try to pick up Heaven's Butcher, it's kind of pricey on eBay, but you can pick up Blood and Circus for pretty cheap, because I think a lot of people just, it's just never got collected into a TPB. It just kind of got put out, and then the publisher was shut down, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pretty interesting story, at least, at least from my perspective, because I when I finished the book, I was sort of a lot of great expectations about it, because it was my best work. Heaven's Butcher actually had quite a pickup at the time, and it was doing well. And there was a lot of feeling that this was going to be sort of like, the beginning of something with, following up my original book. And, but the way that it happened was sort of like, great expectations. Publisher had some financial problems, went out of business, and which quickly transferred to me having a lot of financial problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Which drove me into another passion of mine, which is video games. And so really, a whole career in comics, kind of just went by the wayside very sort of suddenly for me, because that was my direction was comics. And I'd always envisioned that I would have a shelf full of books that I had created, and it's just, one day you wake up and you realize 20 years has gone by and I have one book. But it's a book that got out there and had a following. And so I wanted to get it back into print. And that was sort of the basis for me going back and doing this work.
Yeah, that quickly brings me to something else I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned you had other kind of like other OINK stories you wanted to tell, and then do you also have would you like to do more comic book work beyond that?
Yeah. I mean, I have. I mean, I love comics. I mean, it's my. If I could probably just do one thing, it would be comic books. But unfortunately, it's not a simple thing for me to do that these days because of this sort of, just the reality of the marketplace for an artist like myself. There's not really a huge market for kind of, oddball stories that I do. But I kind of feel like now there's more of a market than there was,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
There's more distribution opportunities. It's kind of like why I've gone to Kickstarter with a lot of my projects, because, when I pitch my projects to, executives or corporate folks, there's sort of a lot of like, okay, are there any superpowers involved, or is there something else that we can market it like? And, like in the case of Bedlam, which is my video game, or the case of OINK, they weren't really any. There wasn't a comparable. There wasn't really like, it's like, nope, it's just my sort of crazy little story idea thing, and but I really, I want to put a ton of work in and make it awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't really matter. when people are looking at financing something. So,
right.
But it does when you do on Kickstarter. The great thing about that is that people can hear your story and they can make their own decisions. So I just go directly to people, and instead of publishers and folks like that, and I see if they're interested, and they have been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think crowdsourcing and just the internet in general, and like webcomics and other, and just sites where people can get an idea of what people are doing has made a big impact on a lot of different arts, but comic books especially.
With comics, I was sort of inspired by I'm somewhat sort of friendly in a stalkerish way with Ben Templesmith, who's of course 30 Days a Night was kind of one of his big titles, but he also has been funding a lot of his projects on Kickstarter. And he recently did Dagon, which was a retelling of an old what's his name, the guy who wrote Cthulhu Mythos.
Oh, Lovecraft.
Yeah, it was an old Lovecraft story that had gone into sort of public domain, and Ben is kind of redoing that. But if you look him up on Kickstarter, you see he's done he's done a few projects now, and that have all been really successful. And sort of every project is sort of built on the previous success. Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of the model that I'm looking at for graphic novels, because he and I are somewhat similar in the sense that we are both sort of artist, writer type guys who usually take longer than normal on books because we do everything on them. Mm-hmm. And it's more about building a kind of building an audience that kind of comes back for more, hopefully. That they read something you do and they like it, and then the next campaign they come back and support that as well. So that's sort of the hope. With right now OINK is it's about, I think it's like 260% funded on Kickstarter. So I started out with a pretty modest goal. I'm not really sure what kind of response I would have. Of course, the IP's been away for a long time. But people showed up. They really, I was actually really surprised. I was like, wow.
It's like
really
like Field of Dreams. If Field of Dreams was not about baseball, but instead a dystopian future.
This is the dystopian future Field of Dreams.
Yes.
It really is. Like, I have a little apocalyptic world that I want to build, and nobody cared until they actually, I'll show you some of it, and then if you like it, I'll make more. That's kind of it.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. Field of Dreams, I like that. Apocalypse.
Show them and they will come. Yeah, like I said when we talked about it, we were not aware of your Kickstarter for OINK going on.
Yeah,
and so I was super excited.
I weren't even aware that I was alive. Like, what? Really? Alive? This was a long time ago. I thought he was dead.
Well, no, we were. I mean. We
remember the 90s.
We remember the 90s.
What's the 90s? Yeah. It was like, that's the 1900s, isn't it? That was the 1900s. Yeah. He was alive in the 1900s. Yes. Yes, indeed.
No, yeah, we're from then.
Yeah,
good.
That's one way to put it. We're not.
I usually try to get that out of the way first. I'm like, are you from the 1900s? Because now we can really talk.
Yeah.
Yep. We can identify.
We remember when music came on two sides of a media.
Yeah.
Each side means something to us.
Yeah, we remember what it was like when things were like analog.
Mm-hmm. I was kind of surprised that this slipped my attention back then too. That was the other thing. It was like, how did I miss this? Because I would have loved to read this when this came out.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't like it was. It was still pretty fringe even then. It just. But it did well. Like I think the first. I want to say that the first. It was printed originally as kind of floppies, and then they did a trade paperback, and the trade paperback really caught people's eye because it was it's kind of how I intended it to be. It was a graphic novel.
Sure.
And, I think there's only like about 5,000 copies out there of that. I don't think they ever did a second printing. So it was like they did 5,000 copies. It was sold out. And then I think we were getting ready to do a whole new thing with it. And then it just, of course, Kitchen Sink just went south. So they were a great publisher. They had some awesome books, and they were really supportive of some crazy ideas. Like they had Mark Schultz, who was doing Xenozoic Tales. A beautiful book. If you're familiar with Mark's work, you're like, oh yeah, he's amazing. No, he's one of those guys. He's like just very slow and steady, and just keeps doing his thing, and immensely talented. They had Charles Burns' Black Hole series, which was really beautiful, and of course the Crow books were really cool. And they had some great artists that were working with them at the time. Alex Maleev got, I think, his start there on that Crow story. Alex Maleev, who went on to do Daredevil he's gone on to do a ton of stuff, but
sure.
He started there. Charlie Adler did the Wild Justice series for the Crow, and Charlie, of course, went on to The Walking Dead, I believe, and a lot of other things. So they it was one of those sort of like really kind of art house publishers. They had a lot of great talent, but those kinds of books just, they did create their own stuff, and that stuff was really high risk. Because
sure, and that was a time when Marvel was kind of saturating the market, wasn't it?
And there wasn't really, distribution isn't what it is today. There just wasn't as much opportunity for these kinds of books as there is. I think nowadays, just I think that places like Kickstarter and just in general the internet has just opened up the world to anybody anywhere can get something like this on Amazon or there's a lot of distribution. Back then, it was pretty much just like you had to go to a comic shop. If you didn't go to a comic shop, you just wouldn't find this stuff.
How did? Obviously, you've been working on the new version of OINK for a long time. How did the release through? Was it Dark Horse? How did that come about?
I released the trade paperback through Dark Horse because I think initially, the plan was to always like, I'm just going to slowly work on this thing, and when it's done, I'm going to bring it to Kickstarter. But I didn't really have a plan. Like, I just started working on it. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just working on this because, like, my life is somewhat, felt like it was sort of falling apart creatively, and this was sort of a way for me to recenter myself. And I started working on it, and then at some point, somebody, I believe it was, I'm friendly with Joe Madureira. I believe Joe introduced me to one of the editors at Dark Horse. I believe he gave me an email and said, you should email this guy and show him what you've done, and they might be interested. And I messaged Daniel Shaban at Dark Horse, and he liked the project. I'd finished about a third of it at that point, and he saw it and was like, "Wow, I really like this a lot. Let's do it." And I was sort of like, "Really?" And then it got serious for me because I didn't really have a timeline at that point, and so I kind of like worked on it in my spare time over a number of years, and then I did the bulk of the work in the last 12 months. Really, not the last 12 months, but in about 12 months when Dark Horse got involved, that's when I was like, all right, I need to do a page a week, because I was working a full-time job, and I was just like, basically my nights and weekends were just working on the book.
Yeah, I always think that, I know about myself, I'd like to do things, but unless I have a reason to get it done, I'll just, I'll take forever.
Yeah, it was nice having, it helped me focus myself on it because, I didn't have a timeline, I didn't have anything, but once I signed a contract which said I would be done with this in 12 months, it was very
yeah,
sure I can do 60 paintings in 12 months, no problem.
Oh wow.
Oh jeez.
Yeah. And my job at the time was not really it was sort of, I was working in video games, but the company I was working for was kind of falling apart. So, I kind of think of OINK as like, OINK is a project for anybody out there who ever had a crazy idea and just thought, this will never happen. Like, you can make it happen. You can make your idea happen. If I can make this happen, you can make whatever your idea is come about. As hard as it may seem, or whatever obstacles people face. I know a lot of people have creative projects that they kind of tinker on and they have hopes and dreams for. And, if OINK is anything, he is a hero of that concept, because I had pretty much all but given up on my life in comics and graphic novels and really, somewhat sort of, it was just, my career had not really gone sort of to plan. It kind of went off the rails a little bit. And it's great that I'm where I am now, because it's sort of all somehow came back into focus. OINK is back out and doing well, and my independent game project was well received, and that's shipping in September. Was it the Apocalyptic Field of Dreams?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bedlam is my video game, and it's actually connected to OINK. It's the universe of OINK. This is sort of fictional land in my head called Bedlam, and I made a video game about it called Skyshine's Bedlam, which is the group of guys that I work with, and it's a post-apocalyptic sort of FTL. If you play video games, it's like FTL sort of term that people call roguelike game. It's very much influenced actually by my earliest influences, which were guys like Mobius and Jeff Darrow. So if you look at that project, you'll see artistically it doesn't look anything like OINK. It looks like sort of somebody who was influenced by a lot of stuff in the 80s, which was me.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask if, since you're involved in both mediums, if you would have like ever plan on doing some kind of a crossover thing where there's a video game world that goes along with the a set of comics.
Yeah, well, that's sort of always been my plan. It's my two great loves is video games and comics, and unfortunately the industries don't really talk much. They're like sort of like these like, you'd think that there'd be more connections than there are, but there's really not. It's like usually whenever I don't know. It's like, I don't know why there aren't more connections there. I mean, I think like Telltale Games did the Walking Dead series, and it's come out great. It's awesome. It's really good if you haven't played it. I think that for me, like it seems like every few years people try to crack this nut of interactive comics, motion graphics, and things like that. And to me, this is what this is sort of like video games are the ultimate version of that. If you just take all the things in a video, if you take the art style you see in a comic book and you just build everything, the game around that, it really celebrates comics and everything about comics. So like when people see Bedlam, I get a lot. It's funny because I get a lot of attention in video games because people are like, it's this awesome comic book inspired video game. It looks just like a comic book, but nobody in comic books will cover it or talk about it with me. I'm like, why don't you guys want to talk about video games? It's like, because it's, I just think, I don't know why I can't bridge the two things. They're like divorced parents.
There is kind of an odd gap there. Even in the fandom, not that the people that read comics don't play the video games, because oftentimes I think they do, but it's like people choose one over the other to talk about.
Yeah, it's weird. And to me, it seems like they should go together.
Yeah.
Especially
they go together like it's like somebody put chocolate and my peanut butter go together. Like,
yeah.
How dare you?
Which is the greatest thing ever, right?
Yeah.
And for me, growing up, I just grew up on comics. I grew up in an arcade and reading comic books. Those were the two things I did as a kid. And I just always felt that they were a very natural thing. But having made my career in both industries, it's sort of like I've sort of divided my career somehow. But it's just what I like to do,
Yeah.
which is, I don't know, it's the way I think it should be.
So are you saying there's hope for an OINK video game then?
Well, absolutely, yeah. No, there's definitely an OINK video game. Well, OINK is in Bedlam. He's in Bedlam. So it's the same universe. It's just a slightly crazier, bonkers version of the same universe. And it's more fun. I mean, Heaven's Butcher, not the cheeriest title.
Yeah.
I'll just be honest, it's not. But Bedlam is actually something that's more. It's from the 80s. It's fun. It's like the fun version of the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sold.
Yeah.
The fun apocalypse. It's the one I want to be in.
All right. So when I was a kid, it was like Mad Max, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
oh yeah.
I identify with what George Miller did recently. I think a lot of people did because it was the original creator going back to his original thing and making a new thing of it. And a lot of people kind of were like, well, it's not really the same Mad Max. It's like, no, it's George Miller's new version of Mad Max. And it's totally badass and awesome. And I don't care about the canon or whatever of it. It's like he made it. He can do whatever the hell he wants with it. And I think the funny thing that came out of Mad Max was the fact that I could give a crap about Mad Max at this point. I just want a Furiosa movie.
Yeah. That would rock.
Well, and isn't that, I mean, I think if a sequel, which there's been lots of, kind of talk about, I think that would be the sequel.
Yeah.
I believe.
It's going to be really interesting to see what he does because he is sort of like, I think he's one of those guys that is crazy enough to just do like, I'm just going to do a Furiosa movie, and then Mad Max is a sidekick in that movie.
Which is almost what Fury Road really was.
It really was, right? Like the movie was about her. It wasn't about him. He had a cameo.
And I like the way you look at it because when I initially heard they were going to do like an updated Mad Max, I was kind of skeptical until I heard George Miller was writing and directing it. Then I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm totally on board. I want to see what this is. So,
well, not only that, but he'd worked on it for like 10 years, so you knew it was going to be something. You knew it was like, this is going to be different, it's not going to just be your run of the mill reboot. Like I think, everything from the 80s, like this year, it's like Jurassic World and Terminator's back and Mad Max, but those are all sort of like, I don't want to, not to disparage, but they're not like, I don't think that they're of the, it's not Spielberg doing Jurassic World, it's somebody there. It was a really successful movie because it played to the fans, but I don't think it was like as pure of an artistic motivation as something like Fury Road.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah. No, they're like, oh, we got new stuff. Let's make some more money.
Yeah.
It sort of felt that way. It was a great. I mean, I love movies like that. They're big. They're silly movies. I think that I think that like a lot of people, or I don't know, like a lot of people, like I try to balance my consumption of entertainment the same way that somebody might diet. Like I want to have my creator-owned stuff that I support and back, and then I like to have my big silly movies that I go see.
Sure.
Because if you don't support one, you won't have the other. Like if everybody just went to go see Jurassic World and you didn't, and people didn't get on, go and find little pet projects that they can support, you're just going to have Jurassic World, and that's like a really bad entertainment apocalypse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just one Jurassic World after another,
Yeah.
Wait,
everyone's riding around in those like spherical things, and then they just bump into each other like a crazy dinosaur pinball machine.
Yeah. It's like if you talk about the movie, it sounds same, It's like, but somehow they just kind of presented it, and it's like, oh yeah, Chris Pratt riding on a motorcycle with dinosaurs. It's like it's almost. The first shot I ever saw of the movie was Chris Pratt riding on a motorcycle with dinosaurs. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was like one of those things like Sharknado, like, oh, come on. He's not really. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? Like, there's no scenario where that makes sense, And of course, then I saw like, oh no, they're serious. It is Sharknado. It's Sharknado with dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And now they're making Sharknado 3, and I was like, it's just going to be Sharknado. It's the Sharknado of my childhood.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, you totally nail like my reaction to the Jurassic Park thing, Jurassic World thing.
I didn't see it opening. Like I waited, like I didn't like. I was like, I'm not seeing this like at first, and then it just blew up, and everybody's talking about it. I'm like, all right, it sounds like a big silly movie. I'll go see it. Yeah. And so I waited, and then I went in with no expectations, and I came out, and I was like, well, it's sort of what I expected. It's like, I mean, it's marvelous to look at, but sort of like I just don't think about it. Just kind of just don't. It's so pretty to look at as a movie, but just don't think about it.
Yeah.
There's really not much there, which is sad because it is so much talent and hard work went into it. But it's not the movies of our childhood. It's not. It's just recycling the same stuff. But it's not like an Aliens or a Terminator or a RoboCop, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So.
You know what? My nephew asked me like a couple days ago. He's like, "There's a new Terminator movie coming out," and I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, you saw the other ones, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Were they good?" And I'm like, "Well, some of them were good." And he's like, "Well, if this one's really good, you think it'll be better than all those other ones?" And I'm like, "Combined? No way. It's just not possible." He's like, "What if it's really, really good?" I'm like, "It doesn't really matter, Dave, because I was there for the first one and the second one, and then even the crappier ones, And it just can't be better."
That's the interesting thing, right? Like it's like they keep trying to sort of like you'd think with with technology and everything that's sort of gone by that these movies would be better than their originals. But very rarely. I mean, I think that's what resonated so much. I think with Mad Max was that it actually was just as interesting as the originals, if not more so.
If not more so, yeah, I would agree
in some ways. And that was what was so shocking about it. It was like, holy crap, he made a genuine film in today's world. Where it's like he just did a 2-hour chase movie, which is like it's almost like an art, an artiste type project where it's like very little dialogue. I mean, you could almost have, I was talking with a friend. I said, it would have been brilliant if they had no dialogue in the whole movie, and it started. The only dialogue was the bit where Furioso asks him what his name is. And then he grunts or something. I don't know what he doesn't respond. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the movie, he goes, "My name's Max," and that's the only dialogue in the whole movie. Like that to me, because the dialogue was so sort of like trivial that it was almost like didn't even need to be there. And I was like, it would have been awesome if it was kind of a silent movie in a way. Like,
oh yeah,
it didn't need dialogue. Like that would have been the true super. It would have blown my mind. It would have been my Citizen Kane for life.
Well, when they were hyping that movie up, I before even the trailers were out, I heard there's a 45-minute long car chase, and I was like, that's insane. I got to go see this.
Yeah.
And then we went and saw it, and I was like, there's not a 45-minute long car chase. There's like a 2-hour long car. The whole movie is the car chase.
Yeah.
It was madness. Yeah.
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 But it works. But okay, it's so hard not to like. Yeah, Mad Max Fury Road, and I'm so glad you brought it up because I was looking, reading through some of your blog posts on the Bedlam site, and there was one about Mad Max Fury Road. So I'm like, ooh, I hope we get to talk about it.
Yeah, well, that was the movie that really defined my life. Sort of apocalypse. Kind of like. I always wanted to sort of make my own little apocalyptic universe, and that's what OINK is, and that's what Bedlam is, and it's sort of like I guess what Stephen King did with and I'll say I'm a very low rent version of that, but what he did with Dark Tower, and he just wanted it seemed like he just wanted to try to take all of his stories and have them tie into the same world where he could sort of have stuff cross each other's paths, and that's sort of my hope is that over the remaining years of my life, I can do that.
Well, and as a consumer of that media and entertainment, I think as a viewer or a reader, I always appreciate when a creator can do that. You know, and it works, and it's like it just adds this extra layer of cool when you're like, all this work belongs to the same universe.
I love it. That's like, one of my main nerd thing is reading sci-fi books, and some of the old ones they'll have like 4 or 5 books in a series in like 14 different series, but they all fit together and they all like give nods to each other, and that's. I will buy everything they ever write because of that, because it's so amazing.
Yeah, I think it's really fun as a reader or just somebody to like as a consumer of entertainment. I loved it when anytime in the Dark Tower series where you would get a glimpse of like it or a glimpse of like other parts of Stephen King's stories. See these characters you get glimpses of them, and it was really cool. It's like. I mean, I just thought that was such an interesting idea. And, as like somebody that's like, who's trying to do this for a living, I just thought I just want everything to be connected. And then maybe one day it'll all make sense.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't right now.
There's time. There's plenty of time. If you build it.
I mean, really, it's like, I'm just somebody that always wanted to like work on my own stuff. And I didn't really have, I didn't have a burning desire to like work on other people's stories. Like I grew up with Judge Dredd and like those were my books were like Judge Dredd, and I was kind of a Marvel kid. I grew up on a lot of the early Marvel titles, and but I never really thought I want to tell a Marvel story, or I want to write a story in another person's universe. It just never really. I don't even know how I would do it. For me, it doesn't feel like a natural thing. Like for some people, I think it is a very natural thing. It's like, but for me, I just never, I don't know. Like I was always just wanting to tell more stuff in my own voice, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that's hard to make a living doing. So it's not surprising that I'm, like on the skid row in the world of comics. It's like, well, you didn't do anything anybody ever heard of. So, of course, but what's funny though, jokes aside, is about the, for the people that did find my books, they really appreciated them. And that's what has sustained it. I think right now there's about 500 people that have backed the project on Kickstarter, which is pretty significant, for a Kickstarter. And that is amazing to me, because it's like 500 people came out of nowhere after 20 years and plopped down their hard-earned bucks. Mm-hmm. And, it's up almost around $40,000 now, and it's starting to look like, crap, I could actually do this. I could just make another book and finance, just do this full time. That would be pretty amazing. So that's incredible to me.
So speaking of the Kickstarter, is there, are there levels and add-ons? Is there something about the Kickstarter that you're really excited about as far as rewards go?
Yeah, the Icon edition that I'm doing that's the main thing, right? It's like I'm self-publishing a big format hardcover of the book, and for me it was really about like the presentation, because trade paperbacks are great, but they're small and they have that glued binding, so you have to sort of bend them in half to actually open them and see the art the way I sort of intended it.
Right.
And the big hardcovers, what's nice about them is you just open them and they just lie flat, and you just see this 16-inch wide landscape sort of format of these pages combined together. And it's really cool. There was one of the things that made me want to do is that there was a French publisher called Delirium, which did their version of they printed their own version of the book, and it was this really nice hardcover, like the way they do in Europe, and it was I was like, this is the way I intended it. It's like it was really amazing. It was amazing. It was really good. Yeah, having worked on the book for as long as I have, it's the way that I intended people to see it. It's full color artwork. It's artwork that's meant to sort of, sit with you for a while. It's not, these are like, they're big paintings. Every page is a painting. It's not just a sketch or a drawing with some color on it.
Yeah.
And I spent an enormous amount of time on it. So, it's not meant to sort of, flip. It's like, I want people to kind of like, have a glass of wine, sit down with a book, and that big hardcover format is is a great way to experience it. And so the Icon edition that I'm doing on Kickstarter, it's like, it's signed. It comes in this really beautiful slipcase. It's got all kinds of like prints with it. It comes with the old PDFs of the original books. It's just got it's got every bell and whistle I could think of, including like if anybody who's interested in working digitally in Photoshop, because I did the whole series digitally. And if anybody's interested in that kind of stuff, there's also like I do a lot of tutorials and things like that, and people get access to all that through the Kickstarter.
Awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah, and I would love to have, because you were saying an image that would stick with you. Even the small flippy versions that I got to look through, there were some images that I was just like, wow, and had to like just stop and look at for a little while because it's so.
Yeah, it definitely does have You want to pour over the page. You want to study it because it's.
Yeah, it's funny. You don't think it's like, well, it's only like it's a 8x12, which is essentially when you open it, it's 16x12. But it's that makes a lot of difference when you look at it. So you really feel like you're seeing the paintings when you open up the bigger version. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so it's that's sort of what some of the base options are. Of course, then I add on all kinds of stuff like custom sketches and drawings that I'm doing to personalize each book as much as I can, because I want to make the book that sits in my shelf that it's just super personalized. It's like it's to me. There's like a tipped in drawing on the inside cover. It just feels like when I pull it out and look at it, it's something that I like to have as a collection, as something in my. I feel like in order for somebody to get space in my bookshelf these days, it has to be kind of unique, and I wanted to make a book that was really unique.
Mm-hmm.
And as it sits, there's still from the time we're recording this, something like 8 or 10 days left in the Kickstarter.
So yeah, there's about 8. You'd think I'd know. There's about 8 or 9 days left. Yeah. It ends August 6th. So we're kind of rounding the corner into the last week. Tuesday will mark the 7-day. We'll have 7 days left. So there's still time to get in on it. I think it's a cool thing, and it's the thing that benefits. I'd say it benefits me the most in the sense that it's direct to my backers. Like there's no middle person or distribution. It's just me and my wife. She's shipping everything out. It's very much a homebrewed business. And so, I love supporting those kinds of things because it's like, I feel like I know where the money's going. It's just going to go to us, hopefully making more of this.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
So anyone who's listening, you should definitely go check it out.
Yeah, go check it out. It's my hope is that I can do Blood and Circus, which is the follow up. And my intention for that is that Blood and Circus, I just want that to be totally bonkers. I want that to like take everything. Heaven's Butcher is it's an origin story of this character, and then Blood and Circus is really the first like arc where it's like oh, this character is sort of in full bloom, because he's just who he is, and now he's out in this apocalyptic universe, running into robots and old war machines and all this stuff left over from the end of the world. Because he just was raised in sort of like this little sort of like almost like cult like enclave, and then he gets out into the world, and it's like it's the world of Bedlam, which is just total madness. It's like thousands of years of war and the detritus of all of our civilizations, just like civilizations that have risen and fallen, and it's a lot of fun. So the sequel is really going to be more almost like my Fury Road, almost like more just like a really fun ensemble type cast with lots of crazy monsters and creatures. It's going to be, I'm all about making fun stuff these days. So, Heaven's Butcher was my foundation, but now where I want to take that story is like, just visually cool, have the same visual stuff that I did in the original, but now just like, all right, where can I take that in 2015 that people are going to identify with? And I'm sort of the feeling that entertainment should be entertainment these days, and so that's what it's going to feel like.
Sweet. I'm excited. Because,
Cool.
reading Hell's Butcher, I was like, well...
Heavens.
What did I say, Hell?
Yeah, it's okay.
I do that all the time. Anyways,
Hell's-
Heaven and Hell, they're interchangeable.
Wait, that's Hold Up Heart, Hell's Butcher. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
You mark my words. Hell's Butcher is going to happen. I'm at least going to do a drawing of that. Hell's Butcher. I like that.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
But yeah, I'm like, okay, this was great, and it was. And I'm like, now I got to see all the adventure that happens between, the beginning and the end of the
His
book.
story, yeah.
It should be around 2035. Let's see. No, I'm actually. It's not going to be that long. I'm fully focused on this kind of stuff now, so it won't be long. I promise.
It's okay. I've had to wait for wonderful things before. It's frustrating, but you do it when you need to.
It's frustrating.
One day they just show up. It's kind of like it's like watching the last season of Game of Thrones. It's like you're so sad it's over because you're like, I gotta wait a whole year or whatever
Yeah.
to see the next season.
Mm-hmm.
That's like this. One day it'll just show up, and you'll be like, "Oh my god, that thing that I liked a long time ago, it's now back around."
Yep.
I was going to say, this is the thing that will push Melanie to finally get a Twitter account, just so every so often you'll get a tweet. Are you painting? What are you doing? Are you sketching another page?
Yeah.
Oh, damn it. Honestly, that kind of stuff did inspire me with the book. Was like just people that have kind of written me over the years. I correspond with them, and it was always sort of was inspiring and amazing to me that they gave a shit. So I often say I did this book was for them. The next one's for me, but this one was for them.
Nice.
Very cool.
So I have a couple things here that I thought I might sidetrack you with, or blindside you. I'm not sure. And I'm having a hard time picking which one I want to ask you about. I think I'm going to go with this one. So, how about your life as a teen model?
Interesting. Heartthrob. That what you found?
Oh, yeah.
You found the heartthrob.
I didn't find much information. I don't even know what site it was. It was a very short interview, and you mentioned it.
Interview, yeah, my life as a teen model. Yeah. So when I was growing up when I was growing up, I did a little modeling. I did a little it was a local, very, very local stuff in Boston, but, I was I got called in to do, a photo shoot for a board game called Heartthrob. And, it was it was just, I don't know what it was. It's like Chutes and Ladders with pictures of boys. It was really kind of like, teen fantasy type stuff. But, I guess I think it actually did. It was like, it did kind of well. Like I had, I didn't know about it, but, I found the board game like years later, and, I couldn't believe it. And so, yeah, I was Nick in that. And you basically got a deck of cards of these shots of these dreamy teen guys from the 80s, and I'm one of those dudes. I'm Nick.
Yeah, I have played games similar to that. I wonder
if you've come across
it might have actually played Heartthrob. Yes. I don't think there were really that many, but so yeah, maybe so. My life as a teen model. Yeah, that was it was basically better than washing dishes, which is what I was doing. It was like my mom worked in Boston, and so she would kind of it was kind of cool. It was like how I sort of learned how to navigate the city. I would go in for auditions and stuff, and I just like a little bit of acting and stuff like that. And I actually moved to Los Angeles when I went to art school in Los Angeles. And I took a stab at trying to be an actor there. And I just realized it wasn't really for me. You know but the thing about that whole thing that struck me was like, in order for an actor to do anything, you need an audience, and that's a lot of like. What if you don't like when you draw? You just draw. It's like it's just fulfilling and feels good, and I love doing it. But for an actor, it's like you need an audience in order to feel anything. Right? Like if you're just reading monologues to yourself, you're a crazy person, you know? So I think around 18 or 19, I kind of decided I'm going to stick with this art thing, even though I was in LA. And I think also because I got to know a little bit more about that world, and I was like, I don't know. I kind of like this art thing more. So
yeah,
but I'm glad I stuck with the art thing.
Me too.
Me too.
I would have been I definitely would have been on like a terrible soap. I would have probably ended up on some, horrible soap opera or something like that,
or a velvet painting,
or a velvet painting of some. I would have found a way to like, I'm glad I honed my art skills because I was not that good of an actor.
All right, sorry, I had to.
That's a great one. Gosh. You know who's an amazing actor? I watched True Detective, and Matthew McConaughey, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay, so acting, like, I think I don't know if like when you see somebody like do something like what he did in True Detective, you're like, that is acting. That is like, it's just such an amazing performance, and you realize like, oh, it's an actual skill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like it when we actually watched a thing recently, but when there's an actor and you don't ever think of them as the actor, you think of them as the character because they're not. They just become somebody different, and that's what acting is supposed to be. Like Gary Oldman, yeah, I love him.
Yeah, he was in who? Oh, Gary Oldman. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like I don't even think I knew there was an actor named Gary Oldman. I just knew all the characters.
Yeah.
Like the longest time, I was like, oh, that's a different guy. Like in. What was it in the Christian Slater movie? It was so good. Oh gosh, he played like the pimp. He played a pimp.
True Romance.
True Romance,
yeah.
Right? Like, there's like True Romance, and then there's him in like in the Call Everyone. What was that? Was that The Professional?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So like it's like totally different. Anyways, I have a great appreciation now for actual. I think actors are amazing, but I couldn't imagine actually doing that for a living. That'd be very, very hard.
Yeah. Oh man. Sorry.
I like that tangent though. That was a good one. Yeah, you know what? That's actually a great Kickstarter thing. I should include a photo of. I should include that card in every edition.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Yes.
I include my teen modeling photos with because I have a bunch of them. I could include one with every.
That could be a great add-on for
oh yeah.
It would be a great add-on, because I'm such like a bearded hillbilly now, but or I was. Actually, I wasn't until yesterday. Shaved my beard. But yeah, if you look at me on the Kickstarter, I look like I've been locked in my studio for a while. Cool. What else you got?
Okay. Well, this amused me, and I think you've talked a little bit about this on the internet. But I wanted to ask you about this because it makes me think of something that Jesse and his brothers would do when they were younger.
No.
So how about when you were a ninja?
Oh my God, my life as a ninja. That was amazing. I trained to be a ninja for very seriously, actually. I mean, I put as much work into being a ninja as I put into anything else I've ever done in life. I was, I think, about 12 or 13. But I wanted to go to ninja camp. I remember saying to my mom, I found that there was a ninja school or they called it ninja camp. It was in the back of like Soldier Fortune magazine, which I would, so it was like next to my D&D stuff. At this point, everybody was quiet like this. Yes. Yeah, I was pretty, I don't know. It was like, do you guys remember who Sho Kosugi is?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So like, he was like my hero when I was a kid. He was like, I mean, and I think he was a lot of kids' heroes. If you grew up in that weird era of like where every movie was a ninja movie, and there was like this. I don't know what year it was. It was probably like between 86 and 80, or it was probably between like 84 and 88. The ninja was like everything. It was everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And I think like a lot of kids, I wanted to be. I'm a bit of an all-in kind of person. Like when I get a hold of something, it's like kind of like what I did with art. I just bury myself in it, and I get really intense about it. And I did that with the ninja thing. And I was like, I was reading books on it, and I didn't really think like I want to grow up to kill people and be an assassin. That's
what OINK is for.
Yeah, it's more of I don't know. It was like just I just thought the whole thing was cool, right? Like I don't know, like I was 13.
I get to do karate and wear a costume. Awesome.
Yeah, and wear a costume and like throw ninja stars and run around in the dark, and that sounds like an awesome living. Like that's anything else anybody has shown me for like how to make a living.
There should be a Kickstarter for that.
Yeah, finance me to be a ninja. That's like more of maybe a GoFundMe or a Patreon thing.
Yeah, that's true. Because it's a long haul. It's not just...
Yeah, it's a long haul. You can fund my ongoing training to go from a middle-aged white man into a badass ninja assassin. That's cool. That's a fun idea. Anyways, it didn't last, unfortunately, and my mom said no to ninja camp, and it was like, nope, you're not going to ninja camp. And I'm like, Mom, it's in Montana and it's in the back of Soldier of Fortune magazine. What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
And she, my mom pretty much let me do anything I ever wanted to do. She was very, very supportive of my goals and dreams, but this was one where she was like, nope.
You're not going to be a ninja, especially until after you eat your broccoli.
Right. You got to just right. You got to eat dinner first. You can't. I'm honestly surprised I did not get shot, because I used to run around in my neighborhood in a ninja costume, like fully armed, like at night, climbing on people's roofs with grappling hooks. I mean, what world am I living in? It's amazing I did not get shot. And it was, and what was worse, it was me and my friend that like we would go out and do this together, and we would we ordered, because you could order all this crap out of the back of these kung fu magazines.
Yeah.
And we had closets full of weaponry and costumes, and like we were like that. It was just like, it was basically like some adolescent version of Monsters, where we would just dress up and run around and just scare the crap out of each other at night, and probably other people.
I think it's just amazing you had a grappling hook. I mean,
yeah, we were, I know, right? I remember thinking, there was some point that I remember thinking, like, I knew that my neighbor had a handgun, and we're on his roof, and I'm like, he's going to hear us. Like, even though we have silent ninja shoes. Guys, what if he hears us? And I just pictured him walking out and seeing it from his perspective. Two guys dressed in black with ninja swords on their backs. Like, he's probably going to shoot us. That makes sense. And it's amazing it didn't happen more often, to be honest. I know I wasn't the only one.
So
there's no outlet. Back then, there was, for like nerds like me, there was no outlet at all. There was no cosplay. There was no, like, the internet didn't exist. So I was just this kid going crazy in this little rural town. And, if it were today, I would be a cosplaying, I'd totally be into going like, the Comic Cons and PAX Primes and stuff like that. I'd be a total fanboy for all that.
I think you just confirmed that cosplay can save lives.
Yeah.
It's saving lives, because that shit is going to get out regardless of if there's a thing for it. People were doing that long before there was like a thing. It's like, it's now that they have a forum. Geez, I could have been winning contests and whatever.
What was your favorite ninja weapon?
I was a big fan of I liked the bow staff. I had a solid oak bow staff that I had become pretty proficient with, and I wasn't good with nunchucks. Like a lot of people, they went for the nunchucks because they're like nunchucks were cool, but I liked the bow staff.
Very cool. Yeah.
You didn't expect such a confident answer, which
No. If you were serious about being a ninja, you had a weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, okay, all right, here's the funny thing. I've never been in a fight in my entire life.
It's because you have ninja skills. You don't need to.
Fight. I am a 45-year-old man that's never been in a fist fight at all. Like, I mean, I've been in like a tussle, but I've never like, punched anybody with malicious intent or anything. So I think whatever this was when I was a kid, it was just adolescent. I do think it's probably the same thing that drives like, cosplay and that kind of thing, fantasy, I was just a fantasy kid, I loved science fiction. I read, when I was growing up, I just was inundated with science fiction and fantasy, and there were no rules in those worlds. And so, it's like, it wasn't that crazy to me. I think it's cool that culture is so positive today. There's such a positive culture around like science fiction and fantasy. And so it's like, there's tons of outlets for kids to get involved with this stuff. And it's such a cool, it's amazing that the nerdy stuff that we grew up with is now the stuff that people love. I think it's amazing to me. That just blows my mind.
Yeah.
It's like it totally flipped. It's not like now it's totally normal and accepted to kind of be slightly nerdy and to, I like, sort of things like Game of Thrones or fiction or fantasy or D&D and role-playing games or whatever. It's like all that stuff's just normal now. Mm-hmm. But you guys probably remember it was like there was a time where it was like, this is the devil, like,
oh yeah,
Dungeons Dragons is evil, like
it's about baby sacrificing and Satan worship. Yeah.
This is just not normal. These kids just, like, do you remember the movie was it a Tom Hanks was in it?
Yeah, what was that? Monsters and Mazes or something
Monsters
like that?
and Mazes, yeah. That was like a made-for-TV movie about the dangers of role-playing.
Yeah. It takes a really dark turn at the end, yeah.
It's very dark, yeah. Well, because it was all about, at the time, people were really, like, seriously concerned about kids' mental health and what this would do to them if they were to, try to live out these fantasies.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like being a ninja.
So, speaking of cosplay, do you have like convention appearances and things lined up?
Right now I don't, but I'm definitely going to be doing some in 2016 for sure. I want to try to. There's a local one in Austin, I think, in the fall, and I'm going to be doing a lot of press for my game coming up. Like we're going to Cologne for Gamescom, and then we're going to like EGX, which is in London, and then we're basically taking the game on the road for a good bit, and that'll probably take me up through Christmas.
Very cool.
But in 2016, I'm hoping to do more comic related stuff when just the schedule allows. Just like kind of like because I love those. Those are a lot of fun. I did there's one called Spectrum Fantasy Live, which is like a bunch of fantasy artists that get together in Kansas City every year. I did that one this year. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was cool. It's a very cool con. Like it's very small. Like you get to meet because it's all about the fantasy artists. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because it's the only con where it's not about the products we make. It's about the artists themselves. And
right.
There's a lot of interesting people there. Like Brahm goes. Like if you're familiar with his work, and there's guys like Paul Bonner and guys like Mark Schultz and Darren Bader and just all these like really awesome illustrator type dudes that go to that thing. If you're familiar with Spectrum, there's a fantasy anthology that comes out every year called Spectrum. It's kind of like just a showcase for fantasy artists, and they give awards and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Very cool. Yeah, Kansas City has a surprisingly rich convention kind of atmosphere, or they foster a lot of good cons down there. And that's not what I think of when I think of Kansas City, but they do.
Yeah, I'd never been there, but it was super cool. I'm definitely going back next year. I'd like to go to Emerald City next year. I missed it this year. I just missed the sign. I would have gone, but I missed the deadline for to get a table. But I want to do that next year, and then I'll probably do a lot of shows in Texas.
So when I know you mentioned it earlier, when does Bedlam come out?
It's going to be out September 15th.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Soon.
Very soon. Yes, very soon. You'll actually be able to pre-order it here in a couple weeks. Yeah, that's really the most. I mean, it's really exciting. It's a big opportunity for me because it's a great showcase for my stuff, and it's a video games usually think of them as like having a lot of people that work on them, but this is just me and one other artist and a programmer, and a couple friends of ours. We hired like a friend of mine who did all the music for Gears of War is doing the music for us, and another sound designer who basically has worked on a ton of stuff here locally in Austin. A lot of games people have probably played, but wouldn't recognize his name or anything. But he's a very, very talented guy doing the sound for it. And then my writing partner is also working on it with me, and he and I grew up together. He wasn't one of the ninjas, but he was he was at my D&D table when we were kids. And now Bedlam is actually it's kind of a whole nother tangent, but Bedlam is the game that we created when we were like, I would say we started it when I was 12. We kind of stopped playing it when I was about 18 or 19, but every weekend we'd get together and we'd play this game, which we called Dungeons and Dragons Road Warrior Outer Space type game, which just shortened to Dungeons. It just became shortened to DDR WST, and then over time we just called it DDR. And so that's the world that it's based in. And what's cool is he's doing all the writing for it too.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So yeah, it's kind of like the greatest thing about the project is that it means that when I was 11 years old, I started working on my first creative project, and it's now coming out 30 years later. Everything in my life everything that is old is new again. I've been rejuvenated somehow. It's like OINK and Bedlam. They're like two things from my childhood that have come back and have set me free.
So Skyshine is your guys' company.
Yes,
you're producing this game through.
We did it on Kickstarter. You can look it up on Kickstarter. If you look up Skyshine or if you look up Bedlam, you'll find us there. But we had about 5,000 backers. It was a really successful Kickstarter, and that was in September of last year.
Is this the first? I guess indie creator-owned type game you've worked on? Have you worked on other games like this, or was it mainly like doing work for other AAA titles before?
It was all AAA title stuff beforehand. I had my own independent studio for about a year here in Austin. That's what actually brought me to Austin. Was I'd gotten a third-party publishing deal with Ubisoft to do my own, I guess you'd call it creator-owned project. But it was back before Kickstarter, and like what happens in a lot of times with big publishers, things just at some point, somebody wants to cancel the project because it's costing too much. And, there was no recourse for us. So our project got cut. But the team that I worked on that with kind of stayed together, and we worked together in Austin, a lot of us for the last 10 years. And then that's the other artists who I work with and the programmer from that team. So it was great. We basically got the band back together after 10 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know creator owned isn't really the correct term for video game.
It is. I actually use it in video games because I don't think people are aware of it. Like, we actually called our game Skyshine's Bedlam because I wanted people to know the studio. I wanted people to know who it was from. And it's something that I've never seen another game studio do that, where it's like, just put your name in the title like you would in a comic book. But in comics, it makes total sense. Mike Mignola's Hellboy or Frank Miller's 300 or whatever. It's like, well, if you make it singular, it's like it's Skyshine's Bedlam. Mm-hmm. So that when we do another game, people know it's like Skyshine's this or Skyshine's that.
That's smart. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, because nobody ever knows the studios; they just know the games. So if you put your name in the title, it's one of the smartest things I ever did with OINK, because people knew how to find me years later.
Right.
Was there anything else specifically you wanted to talk about?
Let me see. We covered teen modeling. We covered ninjas. Covered the games. I think we got more than any other interview I've ever given.
That was our goal. We specialize in tangents here at Grawlix.
I'm just excited I was able to get both the ninja and the teen model story
That
out.
was good. That was well done. Now, of course, other people are going to ask me about this. So I hear that you're a teen model ninja. Tell me about your life as a teen model ninja.
It could be a documentary.
There's some show there. There's something there with that. Like what is it? iZombie. You know, that's like the my current guilty pleasure is iZombie. That's what I've been watching. I watched the first season of that, and every episode I'm like, why do I watch this? What am I doing? This is like Veronica Mars. With zombies, and so you could do the Veronica Mars like ninja, thing like.
Heartthrob, dreamy teen
turns ninja. Zombie ninja.
I'm actually amazed if that hasn't happened yet. That's
because he has to.
Right. Because he has to. He has no choice. He is recruited by Sho Kasuji, and not Sho Kasuji. Oh man,
there's CGI for that. We can do that.
You could totally do a great ninja serial like that. That would be a lot of fun. Of course, you'd have to be fighting another clan of ninjas because you can't really go around killing people. That's not very cool. But you could fight another clan of ninjas.
I think the world's ready for this.
I think so. This is my year to do all kinds of random weird stuff like this. So maybe I might take you up on that. That and Hell's Butcher, and I'm gonna get going on this Teen Ninja screenplay.
Awesome.
I just need to do more podcasts because I'm going to come up with all kinds of great ideas.
Oh yeah, do it. They'll just be thrilled to have like some kind of part in it.
That is again not to talk too much about it, but the greatest thing about crowdfunding that I love is that I put all the backers into my stuff. And so, like with Skyshine, all of the characters in Bedlam are backers. And so when you see them, if you look up screenshots of the game, you will see that they look like people. Like those don't look like video game characters, and they're actual backers.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's
fun.
That's like I'll donate to anything if you make me a character in it. Come on, that's awesome.
That's fun too. I love doing it too. It was so much fun, because I'd get a photo of them, and I'm really good at like bringing out the character in the shot and making them the right kind of vibe for it. But they all came out great. I was super excited about them. I was like, why didn't I do this before when I was working in games, like in big games? Who cares about like this, just sort of like this random faces that people make up? Make them actual gamers, people like back.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, there's a real opportunity that happened with that, and it was super cool. And yeah, we work with our backers pretty heavily on, like, they actually made a lot of the content at the higher tiers. Like they're helping us with some pretty major content stuff right now.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And that's the greatest thing. Like, I mean, having worked on big budget games, like, just huge budgets you just are so, the way that those projects work is that you're so isolated from the person who ultimately you're making it for, that it's really not a very rewarding experience in that way. Like, you don't get a lot of the fan involvement if you're on the development team, until like much later. Like, if it's successful, if it comes out, if you're lucky enough to be one of the guys that they say, yeah, you get to go to the conventions, you'll get to have some fan interaction. But with Bedlam, with crowdfunding, it's just great because you get that fan interaction from, day one. I don't even like the word fan, just backer interaction,
Mm-hmm.
Fans is a weird word for me. I don't know.
It's more like a community.
Yeah, it's like I'm just like anybody else, I just like nerdy cool stuff, and that's what I like to do. And I make video games, and I make comic books, and I like to include other people in that process if I can. Because it's way more fun. And this goes back to my background as just like getting together with my friends every weekend, making a tabletop tabletop game together was the most fun I ever had in my life. You know,
sure.
And so I feel like I've always tried to recreate that experience wherever I go. So I'm always very open. Like people are like, you know, I want to invite them to the process. You know, like, yeah, let's like, hey, that Hell's Butcher idea. Let's work on it. You know, like it sounds cool. Let's
roll up a character.
Yeah, you know, it's just that's how great ideas start. I think, you know, they start as just fun little conversational. Like, hey, that sounds cool. Yeah, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Of course, my wife will say, yeah, you say let's do it way too much because you're overcommitted on every front.
Yeah.
I just get excited.
But you want to do everything.
I want to do everything.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yes.
I guess the only other thing I wanted to ask was, has there been any? You mentioned iZombie as a guilty pleasure. What else have you been enjoying lately, like comics or TV shows or games, anything like that? What have you been into?
Let me see. Games have been, you know, I've been into like, I'm looking forward to the stuff that probably a lot of people are, like Fallout this year is a big game that a lot of people are looking forward to. Currently playing Rocket League on my PlayStation 4. I love my PlayStation 4. It's like the greatest game device ever made.
Is Rocket League the like car soccer thing?
Yeah, car soccer.
Okay.
And it sounds totally ridiculous when you say it, and until you play it, you're like, it's a lot of fun. It's just a quick, like, you know, it's a fun distraction kind of game. And as far as like, you know, I'm really pulling for Shane Pierce has an art book right now on Kickstarter. I'm hoping he does really well with that. I love his work. He's kind of like if you're not familiar with this, he's doing a project called Nomads, and it's his art book, and his work is just really cool. And so I'm kind of trying to support his thing. And, you know, I've really been getting into the, you know, I'm trying to think of other crowdfunding things that are going on right now that I'm kind of like into, but I'm always kind of looking at what's going on with, there's a project called Grenade, which is pretty cool. It's happening right now as well. And that's, I want to say his name is, I forget his name, but I really like the art. So that's kind of what I'm into at the moment.
Awesome.
Can you throw some links at us? Yep. Where can people find you?
So obviously on Kickstarter, if you look for OINK, you will find him there. And you'll also, I think we are going to do what they call a slacker backer. So people that may miss the campaign will still be able to go in and pick up some of the stuff afterwards for some period of time. I don't know how long we're going to offer that for, but it's probably going to be for maybe a month. So people can still pick that up. You can also find sort of my permanent home on the interwebs is bigpigink.com, which is bigpigink.com. And that's my personal website, shop, sort of home base that I do stuff on. My blog, that kind of thing.
Nice.
You can find my Twitter there and my Instagram. It's sort of, I have everything connected into that hub. I do a lot I love Instagram. It's like one of my favorite things. I'm John _Mueller on Instagram. Thank you so much for having me on. This is very cool to talk to y'all.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we've had a bad experience with a guest.
Mm-mm.
But
this was pretty bad.
but there's always a first.
But this was god awful.
No.
But you never really know what you're getting into when you go into one, and this has been fantastic.
Oh yeah, great, lots of fun.
Because I mean, obviously we wanted to focus on the stuff you're doing, but for the most part, this is totally conversation that I would sit and have with friends. So that's,
yeah, me too.
I love those episodes.
But, yeah, those are the podcasts that I love. I like it when people just start talking about stuff that I would talk about with my friends.
Mm-hmm. So it has definitely been a pleasure to have you on.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate help promoting my project, and I hope people check it out and give it a look.
Thank you for listening to the Grawlix Podcast. The Grawlix Podcast is a production of Electronic Media Collective and Vorpal Arrow Studios. This podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. To hear more, visit grawlixpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/grawlixpodcast and like us on Twitter at twitter.com/grawlixpodcast. All right. Well, again, thank you for being on. I'll include the links if people don't remember the links. There will be links in the show notes. Mm-hmm. And yeah, awesome. We'll have to talk to you again.
Yeah, when you come out with more in like 10 years. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
He said it.
You guys will be on your 1,000th episode. And you'll be like, hey, what are we doing now? Remember this crusty old dude?
But no, really, I'm looking forward to everything coming.
Second book. Holy crap! You know, it's on tap. Finally did.
Who? The Teen Ninja.
Andy's a ninja now.
Yeah. He made Hell's Butcher, and yeah, from his hit show Teen Ninja.
Oh, jeez.